So this is a tutorial of how to do your dishes. I've met many people throughout my adult life and young adult life who have told me that they don't really do dishes and have never really done dishes because they believe that housework is just a trapping of a bygone pre-feminist era, a sort of cult of domesticity way of living. And so there are many people who don't do dishes simply because they were never taught how to by their parents, who viewed that form of domestic labor was beneath them, or they just never got those domestic skills out of some misconception of what domestic labor really is, or what it entails, or what it facilitates. But anyway, this is a video where I am doing dishes. Now bear in mind, as I am recording this explanation of me making a video about doing dishes, I am neither doing dishes, nor am I in the vicinity of the video where I am cleaning dishes. I am walking around Parc La Fontaine in Montreal, which is a very slushy, beautiful park, mind you, but it's very slushy. There have been several inches of snow in recent weeks. Last night brought a rainstorm, and the weather has been fluctuating between slightly below freezing and slightly above freezing, meaning that we have had several waves of slight melt and then refreeze and then slight melt and refreeze. So if you listen to my footsteps, you can certainly hear that character of slush. Now, what to say about doing dishes? Doing dishes is something I do a lot. I spend most of my time in my life doing dishes, between 18 and 17 hours, sometimes -4 and sometimes 47 hours a day doing dishes. I spend so many minutes doing dishes that some days I don't even do dishes. Doing dishes is something that's very important to me because I like for my dishes to be clean. If you have clean dishes, you can use them as dishes for when you make dishes and you want dishes on which to serve your dishes. Now, I like to cook, and it is difficult to cook when you don't have dishes to put your dishes on. And it is also difficult to cook when you don't have space on your counters or sinks, because your counters and sinks are covered with dirty dishes, and you need to clean your dirty dishes in order to be able to use your dishes and then make them dirty, and thus the cycle of life trudges interminably onwards. So the way to do dishes, as you may or may not have seen at this point, depending on what point in the video it appears, you start with your sponge. Mine is quite used. It is a double-sided sponge. It has the scrubbing side and the yellow, just plain sponge body side. You start by wetting your sponge a bit and then massaging soap into it. Now, many people have different methods of doing dishes. Some of them run the water the entire time they're doing the dishes. Some of them soak them up, all of their dishes at once, and then rinse them and do it in sort of stages because they feel that way is less wasteful of water. I count myself among one of those people. I tend to soak up all of my dishes and sort of stack them in one basin of the sink. Dirty dishes on one side, soaked up dishes for rinsing on the other side. I find that to be just a more manageable use of water. I also crank my sink tap up to the highest intensity of heat, which in the case of the sink that you are viewing is scalding. It is very, very hot. Sometimes it is too hot with gloves on. So by the time I finish doing 10 minutes of dishes, 15 minutes of dishes, 47 hours of dishes in a single day, sometimes I'm watching the NFL while I'm doing dishes. Sometimes I'm watching the NBA while I'm doing dishes. Sometimes I'm listening to esoteric noise music or free jazz while I'm doing dishes. In any case, the water gets so scalding hot that by the time I am done doing dishes, my hands are red and sweating. Sometimes the tap pours water that is so scalding hot that despite my wearing gloves, I have to pause and take off the glove and shake my hand because my hand feels like it is burning. That is the optimal temperature at which to do your dishes, because that temperature of water will rinse off any oil. It will also help dislodge any dried on bits of food that may be on your dishes. Now, a few things to note about doing dishes. If your dishes are relatively clean and you can get all of the food particles and oil particles off of them by just soaping them up and then rinsing them, that is sufficient. If you have dishes where you have things that are dried on, like, dried on bits of beans, bits of oatmeal, burnt on bits of things, then you will want to soak your dish, sometimes with a little bit of soap. Sometimes that soap is not entirely necessary. In doing so, you will soften the things that are dried onto the dish, and then you'll be able to scrub them right off. Another thing to be extremely mindful of is that as you are stacking your soaked up dishes on one side, you want to make sure that as you are stacking them, you don't allow them to break. One of the ways to work around this is to only focus on one type of dish at a time. So you can focus on cups and glasses and mugs, rinse them off, and then put them on your drying rack. You can focus on just plates, which stack quite nicely in the basin of the sink, and move on to the next thing. You can focus on bowls and do something similar. You can focus on bulky items, cookware, pans, pots, large mixing bowls. Focus on just those. In this particular instance of doing a lot of dishes, it's been probably a day and a half since I've done dishes, so I have a drying rack on one side and a drying mat on the other. One thing you want to be very careful about with your drying mat, whether it is a bamboo drying mat or a silicone drying mat, you want to make sure that you're draining the water out of your mats a consistent amount, because if you leave water on your draining mats, they will get smelly, they will get moldy, and then instead of drying your dishes and making them smell nice, they might dry your dishes and make them smell moldy. That is undesirable. The point of cleaning dishes is to have clean dishes. Thank you for watching this video in which I explain doing dishes and also walking in the slush and snow in Montreal. It has been a pleasure to regale you with the process of doing dishes, and I hope from watching this video you can learn how to stage your own quiet revolution, bringing back domestic work, especially by men, so that non-male identifying people, women, non-binary folks with a KS or with an X, depending on how you believe these words should be spelled, that these people can live out their revolutionary ideals, enter the workplace, subvert the workplace, and that white, able-bodied men can take a back seat to this oncoming revolution and the significant demographic shift in society. It is our job as allies to hold up those who are in marginalized positions relative to where we are. If that is not something we are able to do, and instead we act out of the anxiety of our own displacement, then our society will not move forward. What we want is for dishes to be clean in order to advance society in these ways. Otherwise, you might as well just break the dishes in your sink and forget it. Thank you. Good night.